everybody, welcome back to our collective energy update for energetically sensitives and empaths here for week 19, which is 4th of May till 10th of May 2018. And if you've been following me for a while, I've been doing this for years, reporting about energies that are specifically influencing those of us who would identify themselves as energetically sensitive or highly sensitive. And just as a reminder, of course, this is not supposed to be a fortune telling or anything that is supposed to be coming true in your life without you not actually playing an active part in this. And we're going to get to this here in a second. My name is Yona Brintis. I'm an energy healer and energy coach. And I want to welcome everyone here to this live session. Remember, you can ask questions, so please feel free to let me know where you're from and if you have any questions or comments on ongoing energies. So real quick, before we start to go into the next week, I just want to reflect a little bit about last week. So last week, a lot of people were complaining about sort of flu-like symptoms and not really fully being connected with their bodies, feeling a little out of it, feeling a little sort of above themselves, not necessarily in a negative way or impacting their emotions, but in the sense that they couldn't really feel connected. And these are sort of the end of April energies that are coming into May here. Now we had a very powerful full moon, and full moon is the only sort of outer energies that I can see that have an impact on people because they seem to amplify. So full moon usually seems to amplify, and new moon seems to support shifts. All right, so we are sort of just coming out of the peak of a very strong full on inner conflict. Okay, inner conflict, we talked a lot about this in the past weeks, is what creates inner fragmentation, and inner fragmentation is usually what creates or leads us to needing to resort to our coping mechanisms, to our old ways, to the things that make us feel safe or anything that soothes us. And so from an energetic point of view, that's usually a little critical, and that's why if you remember last week, the energy barometer was on basically two mirroring energies, namely in a bifurcated way that shows how it can go either way for a person. So those of us, and this is crystallizing now with the May energies coming in. Please watch the May forecast if you have the time, where I explain this in a little more detail. There's a lot of energy in motion now. A lot of things are coming finally sort of to the surface. And for us energetically sensitives, this is almost like a relieving event, because we've been feeling certain things coming on for so long. We started to doubt ourselves. We started to, not really knowing, if we can trust in our inner guidance. And all these things are really now starting to come forward. So you'll see that the barometer for next week here is on green, and simply because two major things are shifting right now. And one is coming out of this fragmentation, still dealing with the residues of this here for this next week, but really being held to go into active and conscious letting go, active and conscious connecting, which will then lead us to active and conscious decision making. So decision making will be really big next week. So for this week here, we should use the time to really see what is true to us through connecting within, and what is not true to us. I mean, I know most of you guys have been working on this already, to let that go. Do not let that decide your reality, your perception. Okay, so energies are very supportive here for next week, and that means that whatever it is that you can actively and consciously decide for yourself, or at least where you can set clear priorities, where you can communicate clear what it is that you need and what you no longer need, that this will be supported and will have a great impact on your personal manifestation ability. Why do I talk about these things? Simply because this is what we all want. We all want to be happy. We all want to manifest abundance in our life. And for that, we need to know what the mechanics are. And so working with energies here as an energy worker and seeing the codes that are coming in through the collective, and how individuals process these codes allows me to see what these mechanics are, or in this case, this is how I generate the energy tips for the week, what we can do to improve, our adaptability, our ability to go with this. And I'm going to jump straight into, what these energy tips are. You've seen that I've started to really lay this out for you: the physical, the emotional, the mental, the social or relationship related aspects, the spiritual aspects, and the energetic aspects. And then we're going to go look at the overall energetic situation, which energy centers are playing into this, and what we need to heed in those times. So the increased nightmare activity, okay, this is something that I've noticed very, very strongly. Lots of people reporting about weird dreams, really strong dreams, hard, really hard to sleep, to find rest at night. This has something to do with the sixth chakra activity that we had in these past weeks, okay? And we've talked about this in length, so I don't want to go back into this. I'm hoping that this is slowing down now, because there's a shift now into us sort of more connecting with our inner guidance, and less sort of being at the influence of this astral field around the planet, or within our collective. And this is what I measure, and so I can actually tell that you probably going to have less nightmares. However, you're going to have a really cool sort of inner voice starting to speak to you, and most of you who do active energy work know that this is sort of one of the keystones, of your inner healing path and your journey, to be able to discern between this true inner voice and the true inner guidance that's coming from your true self, as opposed to the negative inner voice, the critical inner voice that's coming from your ego. And here at transCODES, as you know, we work on these things actively and help people, how to translate, how to implement this in the physical, in the practical. So the overall energies here for May are liberation, which means energies want to break free from their imprisonment, and this is something that we've encountered here in the last couple of weeks with our belief systems. Okay, so this will play a lot into the letting go process, because we will see so many things changing in May that we'll basically be forced to let go of belief systems. And the active part that I mentioned, the conscious part that I mentioned earlier, is the part that allows us to see which of these new paradigms, which of these new conditions, all right, that we are going to be exposed to, are actually conducive for us. So it isn't really that hard when we actually realize that some of the things that we used to believe in, or that we wanted to trust in, or that we, really sort of or that we externalized our energy to, that they're really not that good, that they're really not that good for us, they're not strengthening for us, they're not conducive for us, and so it's really not a big deal with letting go. So conscious and active letting go is a process that can come from the insight and the true sort of merging of your mind and your inner guidance, your inner heart feeling, your gut feeling, which tells you, okay, this isn't okay, so that you don't run into the fear of change. The fear of change is basically the same as the fear of the unknown, and the fear of the unknown is the fear of loss and the fear of death, really, the death of the ego. And so even though I think that this can still be challenging here this next week, I think if you just really slow down a bit and don't get sort of caught by this wave of energy, because it's very energetic, it's very dynamic now in these next 4 weeks. And if you learn how to ground yourself, how to center yourself, and occasionally clear stuff that that you recognize that is sort of non-conducive for you or that pulls you down, then you're going to have a really good time here for this next week, because there's a lot of sort of positive energy coming in that is reconnecting you with yourself and others. Okay, and so for the energy tips, really what this means on the physical level, it will be very important that you go, if you haven't done so yet, to go into an active communication, active interaction with your body, and really see, where can I show more love for my body? Is this food, or is this activity, or is the physical does not just imply things in regards to your body. Anything physical, anything solid, can also imply sort of where you live. Is this really conducive for me? And if it's not, guys, it's no big deal to let this go. You don't have to deprive yourself, to make a decision or to make a choice that is conducive for you, because immediately right after you had the courage to do this, you will perceive like a renewal. It's like a reset. You'll be able to feel like, oh my God, this is so much easier. I mean, who of you hasn't had that, happen to them, that they were struggling with making a decision, letting something go, or stopping to eat certain things, or, maybe quitting a certain job, or ending a relationship. And really, the hardest part was all this time that led up to the decision. The moment you made the decision, things felt liberating, things felt freer, and you felt lighter, and that created a momentum. And this is here why I talk about energies of motion, dynamics, mechanics, and so forth. It created a momentum that literally allowed you to make a quantum leap. So I want you to look at it this way, and on a physical level, it's really about understanding that these things that you struggle with usually sort of weave through your life like a golden thread. It's a karmic thing that when you go back and forth between things, because there's maybe something in that learning experience that you're not fully realizing yet, or that you're not fully connecting with yet. And so the moment you truly connect with what it actually is, the pain that you have in your body, or some of the things where you're just simply not happy in your life with, when you truly connect with them and allow yourself to see truth, that's when you become more clear and encouraged and empowered to actually make decisions. What am I expecting on the physical level for next week? Possible that you're going to have issues with your stomach a little bit. I see gallbladder and liver issues flaring up, and also headaches. Okay, so that could be something that comes in next week as a sign of, you still resisting, you are still sort of being in this tension and this indecisiveness. So the biggest overall energy tip for next week is, if there's too much stress, or if there's too much tension, too much dithering, too much back and forth, then just let go. And emotionally, this is sometimes a little more complex, because there are things that play in to these things that make us, of course, not only doubt ourselves, but also doubt, the world that we are in, or the people that we are in. There are lots of disappointments that we had to have or had to deal with lately, betrayal, and this overall feeling of incongruence, that things are just not, that we can't count on anything, we want safety, and we want things to be clear for us, and yet it is our inner indecisiveness that leads to, a falling sort of for things that say maybe just bring in instant gratification, and that have no long-term value, no really nothing that produces better conditions for our higher vibratory goals to come in. So in an emotional level, it's really important that you don't fall for the old stories, for the drama, and if you have experienced disappointments, or if you are dealing with grieving over the loss of something, then, accept that too, and just sit in your grief, sit in your sadness there for a while, and allow yourself to go through this. All emotions are just as important, as any other emotion, and there's nothing unspiritual about feeling emotions. The reason why emotionality itself has such a bad rap is because people get they get pulled into the drama of it, and they use it as justifications, and they use it to support or to cement these belief systems that are actually limiting. And that's then sort of here the bridge to the mental energy tips. What can you do mentally? How can you work on letting go of some of these limiting factors that come in through the physical, through the emotional, and how this affects your thought processes. Your thought processes have a lot to do with like how clear you can actually see where these thoughts originate and what they're up against. Okay, so when you think about just how you see the world, how you contextualize things that are going on in the world right now, there's a lot of change energy. There's a lot of sort of collapse energy in the air, and we can feel this. All right, and your thoughts are the ones, your thoughts and beliefs are the ones that contextualize what you are seeing or what you are experiencing. And so one and the same thing can be or can have a completely different meaning when you put it into a different context. Okay, and so collapse, yes, can be something very frightening, can be something very disconcerting. But if it is a collapse of something like, say, a prison wall, right, and that enables you to liberate yourself and to leave the prison, then the same thing that you are seeing there or that you are experiencing there is actually something positive. And so my tip for you for next week is to really go look if there is another way to look at things, to contextualize things, and to train this within yourself. And here at transCODES, we have sort of this running joke right now, and that's something like along those lines, whatever it is that your ego suggests to you, be it in your thoughts, or in your emotion, do the opposite. Just do the opposite, because your chances of having better results or a more sort of conducive view of seeing things are much higher when you do the opposite than what your ego suggests, simply because your ego is tied to the fear of loss. It's tied to the emotions. Also, of course, this will be something that we'll be dealing with next week, inner child stuff, again, attachments, everything that attaches you to things that could be potentially, harmful or dysfunctional or not healthy for you. Okay, we all have these, and they can lead to shadow aspects, and they can lead to like really strong sort of incongruences in our lives, which is, of course, what we need to look at here. But if you go into this active place that or proactive place that I've suggested to you, then you won't, or you will be able to recontextualize this and to see, oh, I see why I'm clinging on to my old job, or oh, I understand now, why I feel so needy and why I make other people responsible for this. And really all I need to do, is to work with these things, like where does this come from? My need to be validated from the outside, my tendency to externalize my power and to make myself dependent on others. Okay, these are all things that come to you in such a clear and beautiful way that you don't really have to be afraid of them anymore if you allow yourselves to go into this deeper consciousness work, where you learn how to recontextualize the things that you are experiencing, and where you basically allow yourself, even if it's just theoretically at first, to go into a different place and not be just the experiencer, and not even just being the experiencer and the observer. We here sort of really try to lead people to this place where they can witness everything. Anything that happens in your life, you can be the experiencer and the observer and the witnesser at the same time, and it activates different vibrational levels within you. And so in relationships, this clarity that I talked about in the beginning will be very essential here. But because it's such a beautiful week for connection, if you do this, if you have this clarity, and one of the things is refrain from assumptions, okay? Every time we go into these assumptions, we're really allowing our ego mind to go rogue, okay? Because this can lead to massive chain reactions, of course, massive emotional reactions, and it just really pulls you back into all your attachments, okay? So if you instead use this time to deeper connect with your partner, or with, be it your coworkers or your job or your family, and say, there's things I've always understood, or I've always thought that this is, you're doing this because blah, blah, blah. Is this really why you're doing this? Is this really how you want me to feel? To really go into this active sort of exchange. And here's also a bit of this corrective energy still there that we've dealt with in March. So allow that, to be part of your empowerment, namely that it's more important for you to gain clarity than to avoid the truth. Spiritually, where all this going here is of course learning sort of or clearing up the fundamentals of your manifestation process. So a lot of us, of course, have issues with manifesting abundance. We have issues with manifesting a healthy body, okay? And there are many reasons for this, okay? As empaths and energetically sensitives, there are certain aspects that play into our world that may not affect other people that much, and that is that we are constant, or we feel constantly bombarded by other people's energies, or collective energies for that matter, and so it distracts us from our core, it distracts us from our center. And so whether it be, through wanting to be of service, or whether it be, through just wanting to read out basically what's going on around you. And empaths really can't control this until they actually learn the mechanics of energy work. It will always happen to you that you kind of like a sponge when you go somewhere, or, just being in this world really, unless you sit on a mountaintop, okay? And so this distancing from your center is then what makes it so difficult for you to be sort of this straightforward manifestor that some people who are not that sensitive can much more easily do, because they connect much more with their solar plexus, with their masculine energy, and just very directed, but also in the process often violate a lot of integrity. So for empaths, integrity is a huge issue, because, if we would do something like, say, and I don't mean this from sort of a white shadow point of view, where we just want to love everybody, obviously that is not realistic, but as an empath, if you hurt somebody, especially willingly, okay, we do hurt people, of course, but if we hurt somebody willingly, or like say for the sake of my own goal, then what happens is that I can't really enjoy reaching that goal, because I'm also feeling the pain that I'm inflicting. And so this is sort of this new energetic sensitivity brings in new challenges in this world. And on this spiritual level here for this next week, I recommend you to really go in, and this is something that we call inner fusion, to really go in and find that center point, find your heart, and try to merge your emotions and your thoughts, your mind and your emotion with your heart, so that you can actually be in a place where you can truly connect with what your true passion is, what your true needs are, what your true goals are, because that is then sort of your true thread through your life, you know. And even when you get distracted, you know, through the emotions or through your own thoughts, you know, through emotions coming in from others, or you know, whatever is going on inside of you, then all you need to do is like to ground yourself, to center yourself, clear out these things, you know, that are distracting you right now, the attachments, inner or outer stuff, you know, and regroup in your center. We call this mental heart fusion. You know, this is a very important sort of learning step here for our manifestation abilities, namely because it allows us to really access our true power, all our great skills. And many of you energetically sensitives and empaths, you know, have had a lot of trauma in their lives, and part of that, I don't think that is actually statistically true that we perceive more trauma than others do, but the way this affected us in the past was that we basically had a double trauma in that sense, that we of course experienced our own trauma, but we could also experience the trauma, or say like the pain of the perpetrator. And so there's the very interesting psychology in empaths that we can observe here on an energetic level, and can see how these different ties and energetic hooks between people make an empath experience something in this very sort of back and forth type of way. And this is why empaths often have a problem with making clear decisions, because they have this inner fragmentation going back and forth. They can switch sides, and they can really feel on both ends, and in that process they often lose themselves. You know, they often lose what is my true value. So for empaths, it's really, really important to stay grounded, to know how to center your energy, and to regroup, to reset. So here again, you know, the resetting in the spiritual sense is that when you see that your energy gets frazzled, or that you get, you know, somehow distracted or drained, you know, is that you make you know, that you develop this discipline to immediately reset. Go into your heart, you know, really expand into your heart. Let everything go consciously, everything go, and focus on what your inner truth is telling you, what your heart is telling you. And then on a pure energetic level, the way we approach this is by, of course, being proactive in certain areas that we already, or that we can anticipate that could come in as distraction, or as, you know, these mentioned challenges for empaths, and that is to do active shadow work, to do active inner child work, you know, to go in there and know your energy. So this is then, you know, the recommendation that I have for you for next week. So because you're not really going to be like pulled into it, you will feel it, but you're not really going to be dominated by it. And this is a wonderful opportunity to work with these things, because it allows you to be a little stronger in this observer sense that you have, and you don't have to go into the experiencer too much. So this is really, from an energy work perspective, why we do a lot of these sessions that we do here in our transCODES calendar, why we do this, and also in sort of the revolving nature, because these things have to be done every time that the collective energy is favorable for this. Now, on a sort of global collective level, like how does all that I just sort of laid out here for you play out in the world? Okay, well, in the world, like say on a geopolitical level, this is not actually happening. So there is no active conscious choice. There is no alignment to the heart yet. Okay, so our collective is on the cusp of getting there. So most of what we see here as a larger energetic dynamic is breaking through the barriers between the solar plexus, the third and the fourth chakra. So getting through this ego layer, okay, into our heart. This is what's going on in this sort of collective awakening movement right now. Politically, because there's extremely strong power structures, and these power structures are not willing to let go for, like, say, the sake of the higher good. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of, like, struggle, okay? And some countries more than others. So historically, some countries, some nations, some of the big nations have gone through forced or self-induced shadow work, okay, and where they've, where they had their rise and fall, and they had the sort of this natural grounding and renewal that came through, the collapse of a country or the collapse of a government. The United States, as one of the big players here in the geopolitical area, has not really had that yet. So this is, as a European living in the United States, one of the biggest geopolitical movements that I see is that here in the United States, we have literally the emergence of the collective American shadow, and that if people are not willing to really enter into this process and admit to these things and allow these things and clear them out and clarify them, such as, the things that we see with all these truths that are being revealed about lies of the government, lies of companies, misuse of data, you name it, sexual assault, and degradation, racism, and all these things. These are all things that still need to be clarified, that need to be resolved for the American collective. And this is a sort of the part of the big. YouTube has a really long delay here today, so I didn't see that the setting was wrong. So anyway, other countries, and especially Europe, is more hit now by a very old karmic unresolved issue. Okay, so there it's not so much about the shadow work. The work there, it's really about unresolved issues, things that have been carried around since the Crusades, and you will see this, especially, I've mentioned this last time, UK, Germany, countries that have been really big players in these past 1,000 years, and they're sort of colliding now with some of these forces, that they subdued, that they that they degraded back then, and this is coming back to them now as the need to resolve this. All right, so here too, it is unlikely that there's going to be an active resolution, but a lot of people in Europe actually can see this, because they're like a step ahead here of Americans, simply because this shadow work has already happened there. And yes, hello to Canada, hello to Australia, hello to America. Yes, we're looking at things here from a energetic perspective, and not from the perspective of my personal opinion or anything, or moral perspective. This is really just looking at the energies of these nations. Okay, so you're going to see a lot here going on in Europe with this karmic conflict in conjunction with the Middle East and Asia. All right, so these things need to be resolved. Earth changes due to these really strong energies moving here in this month. It is highly likely that all this comes into manifestation this month. So in our Sacred Self-Healing group, we've already talked about May energies and went a little deeper into this. There's no reason to really be, to go into fear. Again, here, if you go into fear, then you just get pulled into these old attachments, and that can, like trigger your shadow and things that really disconnect you from yourself again. So this is not the reason why I'm bringing this up. It's more so that you understand how collective energies, really manifest on all these different levels of our existence. And so, expect that. This is also another reason why it's so important that you connect it with your heart, and that your decision-making process goes into this more advanced place now, where you put your thinking and, you know, your inner guidance, where you merge this, all right? Because this is where some really good choices can derive from out of this inner connectedness, namely you'll be at the right place at the right time. You say the right things at the right time. You don't need to worry about this. These are things that you cannot resolve with your mind, and you cannot resolve them with your emotions. So you have to learn how to bypass that, and it's the diffusion heart mind, you know, that allows you to do this. So this will be coming in here for this week. And yes, South Africa, I'm seeing you too. It's wonderful how we built this whole entire network here around this world. So make sure that you guys understand that this is now transformation in action, okay? And, you know, as we've talked about it last week, you can either resist it and then it gets really hard and you'll perceive things as a struggle, you experience things as a struggle, or you can go with us, you can go proactive and become the witnesser of all of that. And in that is a huge manifestation power, you know, in that reset, because you like literally consciously letting go of everything that is clouding your perception, that is clouding your experience right now. And you're starting, you know, clean slate. And for many of you guys, if you read this right here, what the message is for this next week, it's like a second chance now, whether it be in your relationship, whether it be in your career, whether it be in your finances, you know, or, you know, like just sort of cleaning up your life. Wonderful, wonderful time. And I hope you can enjoy this. And I need to get ready here for the crypto energy update, where I contextualize all this for the coming week in the crypto market. Oh, and I forgot to say this, the energy centers affected here this next week is now, instead of our 6th chakra, it goes into a 7th chakra. So this is really the context, you know, the ability to connect with the larger picture, with the larger vision, with the higher consciousness. It is this barrier between the 3rd and the 4th chakra that I mentioned, you know, which is really the barrier between, you know, selfishness and, you know, manifesting my higher goals. And also as an empath in particular, how can I get these two things together? Okay, is it selfish of me, you know, when I'm following my true goals? No, it is not. You just need to know what your true goals are, because if you're too much caught in your shadow or in your inner child, then what you think your goals are most likely determined by your energetic attachments. And so we need to be proactive there. And once more, or still, you know, our first, and especially for this next week, our 2nd chakra, it's our emotion. And this is where we relate. And this is, you know, also where we want to feel home and where we want to feel loved. So my last tip here for this next week, as sort of the question that you can ask yourself to navigate through all of this, is to actively do this reset and then ask yourself, is this based on love or is this based on ego? Is this based on love or is this based on ego? That can help you to get to that heart-mind place that I talked about earlier. And we can talk about this more next week. Thank you guys for coming. I wish you a wonderful time. Oh, and if you need help, if you need energetic assistance, on Saturday at 10 p.m., the 5th of May, we have our free monthly energy healing session here for anybody in assistance and need, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Our 5-year anniversary of the remote prayers group healing sessions. So please tune in, check this out at transCODES.com. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and smash the likes. Thank you. Bye-bye.